Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. Today is Monday, and Dave, we got kind of snowed out of some games, didn't we?
Yeah, a little bit of snowfall, canceled some games. Fortunately, the roads weren't too bad, I don't think, but it was enough to err on the side of caution and cancel a bunch of games, and so now we're left with some rescheduling and some we missed some pretty decent games that could have happened over the weekend. Yeah,
an affair between Woodland and Notre Dame is something I was expecting to see, especially at happening at TRCC's gym. Like that's a pretty decent venue for like local high school basketball, and to kind of lose that game. I assume it's been rescheduled, but I'm not actually sure if it's just been canceled outright.
Yeah, I haven't heard, what they're going to do with that game. A lot of times when those games are like scheduled for, before a Three Rivers game, there's, every Three Rivers game I think has a game in front of it. So I don't know if they would be able to reschedule that or not. And, but yeah, that was going to be a good one. The Sykes and Charleston rivalry that's been, that everybody talks about, and it's a big rivalry. That one was canceled, and it's unfortunate, but it's part of living in the Midwest. You're going to have some snowed out games, and now you just hope that they can find a time to reschedule them.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty consistent for a lot of teams around this area. And what it kind of shows to me is that, like, oh man, this span in like mid-January to late January is kind of getting a little bit sparse.
Yeah, there's a lot of games, but at the same time, there's not a lot of games because there's a lot of games scheduled. You got a lot of games that are rescheduled. You got some games that you're just trying to fill out, for your conference that maybe aren't really big games. But right now, it's just teams are just trying to play as much as they can and just try to get better and as you make this playoff push.
Yeah, it's an odd thing to me because I've kind of noticed that regular season, as much as it does mean something, a lot of teams get the bulk of their games out in December just with all the tournaments that go on.
Yeah, a lot of tournaments, a lot of games back to back to back, and you've got a lot of you get a lot of games out of the way, and it kind of seems like end of January you've got a lot of tournaments going on. You've got your county tournaments, other tournaments that teams are in. Kind of that's late January, and then again, you start your February with your just kind of managing, trying to get 1-2 games a week, and just trying to manage it as you get toward your districts and trying to stay healthy, get better, but also have plenty of practice time to improve on what you need to as you get close to districts.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as that goes, like, do you think kind of more of a push should be made for regular season to kind of have it? Not to say that teams need to play more games, but more substantial games to buff up their season.
I think it depends on who you are. I think some teams overschedule. I think we've seen a few teams this year that have kind of overscheduled a little bit and they're kind of in over their head. I think other teams are they schedule right, and other teams maybe don't schedule as tough. But it's also tough to know year to year. Okay, well, we've played this team for a while. They should be good this year. They are normally good, but they're just down this year. You've got a lot of, that's always unfortunate when those cases, when you depend on those teams to kind of beef up your schedule, give you a tough game, and then it's not a tough game. So, you just never know year to year. And, I know teams that try to schedule tough, try to beef up that schedule for, to get ready for district, especially when they think they're going to be good. But you just, it's just kind of a crapshoot sometimes.
So just kind of looking back at some of the games coming from last week, was there anything that stuck out to you as kind of like, this was a good game?
Not really, man. I mean, really, the Wednesday and Thursday games were kind of really not, kind of what we expected. I think, Risco took care of Bell City. I mean, it wasn't a blowout, but Risco just had the better team. Mm-hmm. Their Jimmies are better than their Joes, but Bell City, I'm still impressed with them. I think they continue to get better, and I know they're missing their big guy inside. When he gets back, they're going to be even tougher. So, I was impressed with that. Dexter no-showed against Cape Central.
Which was really disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing. Watched a few minutes of that at the beginning and didn't really have to watch much more of that. You could see kind of where that one was going. Dexter has to show up, and pretty early in those games, what Dexter is going to be there, and that was very disappointing. Notre Dame, New Madrid, that was kind of just a blowout.
Yep.
Sorry, New Madrid. Pretty much everything was what I thought. I was surprised with the South Pim Malden score. It was just a 7-point game. I didn't get any eyes on that, but I was surprised at the score.
See, I don't know if that's another thing of just like either South Pim is kind of playing down to their competition, or are they still just in this slump of just being rusty.
We saw Malden play Campbell tough earlier this year too. So Malden has it in them that they can play that way, but I was just really surprised by the score. But again, I didn't get eyes on Jackson. Kennett was a close game.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised by that. At the same time, I'm not. Jackson's style that they play is just not a style that's going to blow a team out. And when you hang around, you make that long drive down to Kennett, and you never know what you're going to get. And it doesn't necessarily surprise me, but I figured they'd win by more than 4, but they pulled it out. So good for them. They're a good team, but just their style kind of keeps other teams in games.
Well, for Kennett wise too, like think about what they're going to be bringing like in the next few years, because they're still like in a new coaching situation like that. They still need time to gel with each other. And I think to play Jackson that close, even if it's home court advantage, I feel like that's impressive for Kennett.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've liked Kennett all year. I think they continue to get better and better under Coach McBroom. I think that's going to be a team that in districts can make some noise. We keep talking about Dexter, challenging Notre Dame. It could be Kennett as well. Kennett, if they continue to improve. Only thing I worry about Kennett, they're just not real deep. And, you can't get in any foul trouble. You can't get in any, there's just a lot of variables there.
You saw what happened if they lost Dyson Watson.
Right. In the Christmas tournament, you saw that. So, that's kind of a worry for them. But at the same time, they've been getting better and better. And they could very well challenge for that district title with Notre Dame. Yeah.
Team chemistry wise, I think they're just going to get better. And, for Notre Dame too, they're such a mixed bag of whether they're good or not. And I maybe that depends on your opponent. Obviously, New Madrid County Central, that's not really stacked up to them at this point, but how they're going to compare against Kennett or Dexter, I think that's going to kind of be more telltale. And especially if they're going to play Cape Central coming Monday, I think.
Yeah. I believe that's
Monday or Tuesday.
I believe it's Tuesday here. Yeah. Tuesday. They're kind of dependent on how they shoot the ball. But they're guarding very well. They're really getting after it defensively, and that's a plus for them. They're kind of playing just a different style than what I think we're kind of used to seeing in Notre Dame. Usually Notre Dame's kind of up and down, shoot some threes, get out a little bit in transition. This team's a little bit different. And I think that it's a struggle for them just to kind of get used to this style, even though it's the second year under Coach Brinkmeyer. I think the tendency of some of these guys is to get out and run a little bit. And I think that the coaching staff kind of wants to pull them back, play some good defense, work for that open shot and work the ball around. You got Dohan in the middle who can really put it in the basket, and that helps. Once he gets going, it frees up Johnson outside. So I think they like to get that inside out game going, which kind of slows it down a little bit. And I think they're just kind of adjusting to that, which it seems like, they looked really good against New Madrid, but again, New Madrid's a little bit down. So we'll see as they play Cape Central. I think that'll be a good measuring stick to how much they've improved this year. Yeah.
And let's talk about Sikeston and Charleston really quick, because I want to get your gauge on how do you think those two teams would have stacked up if they had played each other?
I think Sikeston probably would have blown them out this year. I hate saying that because I do know that whenever you have those two teams play, you can kind of throw the records out the window. Sikeston's just so much more talented this year than Charleston, and it would have been tough for Charleston to stick with them. Charleston's not a terrible team. It's just that the matchup just favors Sikeston in every single position, and so. I just think that would have probably happened. It's unfortunate that they didn't get to play. That's a great rivalry. Again, if nobody's ever been to that one, it's very intense when those two teams play, especially when they play at Charleston. It's a get there early because they're going to lock the doors by JV start game. It's a packed house. It's loud. You can't hear yourself think in there. It's crazy. And if you've never been there, it's hard to explain. But it's a shame that it didn't happen. We'll see if it does happen at some point during this year. I kind of wouldn't hold my breath. But at the same time, I really hope they do play.
And I think the importance of a rivalry is great, but I think for Sikeston right now, I think your eyes are kind of like focused on playoff picture at this point.
Yeah, and they've got a gauntlet of a schedule coming up. We can get to that probably a little bit later, but they've got a gauntlet of a schedule. You talked about teams of scheduling. They really have scheduled tough to make themselves better at district time, and they've got a 3-week span here, basically, where they're really getting after it, and they have their eyes toward that district title.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of like for local team wise, Sikeston just feels like a different breed at this point, because that like everything they're doing is building towards postseason. The success they saw last year, I think they want to replicate and obviously do better than they did last year. Who knows if they're going to meet Vianney in the same place they did, but if they do, they obviously want to be prepped to beat that team now. So I think everything we're seeing from Sikeston is just head and shoulders above everybody else in the area.
Yeah, and they're playing well. I mean, at least we're through Christmas. They haven't played in a couple of weeks now. That's another big loss with that Charleston game is they didn't get a game in.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Farmington on Tuesday. You kind of want to be primed and ready to go for that. You really don't want that being your first game in a couple of weeks. But they're focused on districts. No matter if they get out of districts, whoever comes out of that Class 5 District 2 is going to be a tough team because that is a brutal district. It's a brutal Class 5. I mean, there are a lot of good teams in Class 5, and if you can get out of it this year and hold that trophy at the end, you are a really, really good basketball team, and that's Sikeston's ultimate goal. And they're doing everything they can scheduling wise, to get there. I mean, we can talk about it now. I mean, just their schedule in the next upcoming, they play Farmington on Tuesday. Friday, they go up to St. Mary's. St. Mary's has the best point guard in the state in Zaire Collins. And they're 7-6, but their only losses are to state-ranked teams in Missouri. Mm-hmm. And then they've lost to a couple of out-of-state teams as well. I'm not sure if they're state-ranked, but they're really good. Then next week, they go to Callaway County, Kentucky. They're 15-1, one of the best teams in Kentucky. Then they go to Kennett on Friday, a week from Friday, and then a week from Saturday, they play Gateway Legacy at home. Their first home game that they're going to have since Notre Dame right after the SEMO Conference Tournament. So, I mean, that's Farmington, St. Mary's, Callaway County. That's 3 tough games, and then you follow your Gateway Legacy up with a Union tournament up in I think it's by Washington, Missouri, up near St. Louis. And that's a tough tournament. It's got St. Francis Borgia, Lutheran South, Rockwood Summit. It's got some really tough teams up there. So they've really beefed up their schedule, and they've got a brutal few weeks coming up here. A lot of travel, a lot of going here and there, and we're going to see how good they are here at the end of January.
Which I think is great because, as much as we love local rivalries, I love seeing a team like Sikeston succeed in what they're doing and, just push ahead of everybody. Because I feel like in the area, we always have one team that we really want to root for in these situations, sometimes 2 or 3. But right now with Sikeston just being so head and shoulders above everybody else, I feel like that's a team you can put your aspirations on their back.
Yeah. And this is one of those teams too, that they know that they're probably not getting the, in past years, you would have really, really tough games in the SEMO Conference, and there'll be some tough games in the SEMO Conference for them too. But top to bottom, the SEMO Conference isn't what it has been. This is one of those years that if you really want to test yourself, you got to go outside of the area and play some of these teams like St. Mary's and Callaway County and Gateway and they played Principia earlier. You've got to go out. You got to go out and play some of these tougher teams to get that to get yourself tested. And they're going to play Father Tolton, I believe, later on in the year. I believe that's another one on their schedule. So I'm like, they've got a lot of tough games with that eye on, hey, we want to get out of districts and make a run as deep as we can in Class 5. Yeah,
I do think it's funny because as soon as you start seeing on the schedule a bunch of names that a team's going to go against that you just go, who? Not in the bad way, but just like, I don't know these teams. That's when they're going to really push to make a state run.
Yeah, and I tell you what, again, I've said it again. You can't overlook this Farmington team. They're 10-1. They've already beaten the St. Mary's team. They beat Cape Central. They were supposed to play Cardinal Ritter and snowed them out. I think they're going to end up playing the end of January. I mean, they're another team that's trying to schedule tough to test. I mean, you asked me, about them, and they've got a 6'6" guy named Kenan Roth is his name, averages 16.5 a game, 8 rebounds. They've got a 6'2" senior, Logan Shoppert, 18.5 a game, five assists. They've got some juniors that really fill in roles. They're a pretty big team. They've got a sophomore that they bring off the bench. I mean, so they're a well-rounded team. They're a team that likes to get up and down the floor a little bit, especially for that mineral area up there. Usually they're kind of a slower paced group up there in the mineral area, but not this Farmington team. They'll get out and play up a little bit up tempo. They played Sykeston tough last year, and districts are going to be at their place, and it's tough to play up there. That's those who have driven up to Farmington, especially from Sykeston, on those windy, curvy roads up in those hills.
It's a drive.
It's a drive, and it is not a fun drive on a bus. Mm-mm. And you get up there, and then you have to play basketball. It's not always a lot of fun, and so we'll see. We'll see how they match up. They play Tuesday night, and that's going to be a game that I'm definitely looking forward to, because that's going to give us a good indication, probably for the top seed in that district, and it'll give us a good indication on how those teams match up.
So kind of just a little bit of speculation, just because of what you said about the SEMO conference and kind of how it's down this year. What do you think it's going to be like next year, considering how some of the young talent is in some areas, and how some we know seniors are going away. So Sykeston's losing a bunch of seniors. Notre Dame's losing a bunch of seniors. I'm sure Cape's losing some seniors. But how did the teams stack up next year?
I think next year it'll be top to bottom will be more. There'll be a lot of parity. I think, I don't know if there won't be that team at the top that just stands out. I don't think there'll be a Sykeston team. Now, Sykeston may be a really good team. They won't be what they are this year, unless they get a transfer or two and take a little jab there. But no, seriously though, they're probably, it's probably going to be a lot of parity with a lot of teams right around the same. But I think it's going to be better talent than there is this year as far as top to bottom. Mm-hmm. I think, but I think it's going to be one of those, just kind of more parity, better talent, but without that one team at the top that just kind of stands out. I think you're going to have some really good teams, but not that one dominant.
Prototypically, we usually see, kind of Sykeston, Cape Central, Jackson, Notre Dame kind of at the top, and then Dexter and Kennett kind of being that, 8 and 9 seed perennially. Do you think that's going to get mixed up at all?
I do. I think Dexter will be a little better. I think Kennett will be a little better. At least, Dexter has pretty much everybody back but Temples. So, assuming everybody comes back next year. So I think Dexter would kind of raise a little bit. You would think that New Madrid would be a little better next year. You think Charleston would be a little better next year as all those sophomores and freshmen get better. Who knows about Notre Dame? Because they lose pretty much their whole rotation. Sykeston will still be good. They're still going to have some really, really good players. Poplar Bluff's got some guys that are going to be back. Cape Central, obviously Edwards is going to be back. And Goliath's going to be back, or should be. So, you have all, these are all should be back. You never know what's going to happen from year to year. But yeah, I think it's really tough. Jackson's, they've got a freshman that Ernst will be a year better. And they've got a good JV. I don't, it could be the same seeding as it is this year with a lot better teams and more parity, or it could just be flip top to bottom. Who knows? But, I can't pick out a team out of that SEMO conference. I'm going to be like, they're just not going to be any good at all next year. I just can't see that. And I can't see a team that I'm going to be like right now that I'm going to be like, oh man, they are going to be just a dominant team next year. I can't see that either. I just see a lot of parity with a little bit better talent than this year.
Well, I think that's the hope too, is that next year we're just hoping for more competitive games. Not to say that it wasn't competitive this year in 2024, but it was pretty clear that Sykeston was going to win that from the start. And we could try and dress it up as much as we wanted to. They're like, well, maybe we never know what's going to happen, but I think everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall. So to go into a tournament and not have that feeling, I think that's going to feel a lot more, everybody's going to be more excited about it in general.
Yeah, the eye test was definitely Sykeston this year. If you were at the SEMO conference tournament, they definitely passed the eye test. But, You're right, but I think there was a lot of good games. I think those games will continue into next year. I think those you just continue that, except throw into the mix that you don't have that dominant team, and the SEMO Conference tournament could be just outstanding next year.
Anybody in the kind of small school sphere that you're looking at right now?
I really want Risco to make a run. We were kind of talking before we went on the air here. I kind of want them to make a run in Class 1 this year, just because they've had some really, really good teams in the past and ran into some really good Scott Central teams. It was just unreal for a Class 1 team, and they kind of ran into a buzzsaw a few times, and I really feel like if they're ever the path is there for them to make a run. It's a tough path. I mean, I'm not for sure not looking at anybody that comes out of that district with Richland, and I'm not sure who their quarterfinal opponent would be. Last year it was Chadwick, and who knows? Chadwick was really good, and they're still good this year. So if they match up with them, that's a tough one. But I really want them to get to the Final Four and experience that. Coach Blankenship has been there for a long time, and he's really built that program into something good. You're at a small school. You're kind of at I mean, you get what you get, as far as players wise, but he develops them, and they really, have a good team this year, and I would really like to see them kind of make a run.
Yeah, I would say that it really does kind of go miles with how cohesive that team is, knowing that like it is a small school, that you're picking your talent pool from whoever you get, and the fact that they can play the way they do, and yeah, it's if they're gonna. Richland's obviously going to be their biggest hurdle at the, in that long-term stretch, but we've seen them play already. And not to say that it's going to be the same outcome every time, but Risco just feels like the better team at the moment.
Yeah. But with that same thing, they did last year as well, whenever they beat them in the regular season, and Richland got them in districts. So you don't know, you just don't, it's always when you get into that districts and state playoffs,
records don't matter.
Records don't matter at all, and it doesn't matter how you played earlier in the year against them. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. So you just got to be peaking at the right time, and so hopefully, and for that matter, Richland making a run to the Final Four would be just as good, because the excitement that neither one of them had been there for a long time. Now Risco, I mean, it's been forever and a day since they've made a run to the Final Four. Richland, of course, there's some success in the mid '90s and got a state title, and had some success before that in the '70s. But Risco, they don't have that, and I'm sure just seeing the excitement that they brought to the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, just being in that tournament and being part of that, and then doing well in that, it just kind of that excitement. I can't even imagine what that excitement would be if they were to go to the Final Four. I think that would just be that community would just be riding, on cloud nine. So it'd be just kind of neat to see. And, I think Coach Blankenship, boy, he's been around for a long time and has really earned it. And I'd like to see him make a run. At the same time, if it was Richland, I would be just as happy for Richland. I think that that would be a great run for Coach Klein. I mean, because he's been around for a while as well and had some good teams that haven't, made that run. So either one of those, I'm kind of rooting for somebody from Class 1 to get out and to get to that Final Four for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like between Richland and Risco, there's a lot of parity just between the two teams. I feel like Richland feels more, I don't want to say abandoned at all, but they don't feel like they're getting the recognition they deserve. But at the same time, it's like I need to see more. If you guys believe you're as good as you are, I need to see that. Yeah.
I mean, you exactly 100%. And I've got had a few Richland people get on me a little bit, and that's fair. I mean, that's fine. I mean, good. I want it's good that they support their team, but you're right. They've got to show a little bit more than what we've seen. And I mean, losing to Bell City, that's not a good loss. You lost to Risco in the Christmas tournament. I mean, you got to win those games.
Yeah.
You win those games, and it's flipped. Maybe we're talking about you as like, hey, that's a Final Four team right there, and I don't think they are right now. That doesn't mean that they won't be in February. Again,
it just doesn't feel secure in this moment.
Right. Again, like I said, they really peaked last year in February, and if they do the same thing this year, I can see them making a deep run. But they just haven't peaked yet. And if they do it just like they did last year in February, then I would 100% believe that they can make that run. And maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe they're a team that just is working on things, and then February comes around and they turn it loose and they're ready to go. And I mean, more power to them if they do. That's great. I mean, that's because that's exactly what you want to do, is be peaking in February. So yeah, I mean, either one of those teams, I would love to see make a deep run.
Now, Class 2, how are we feeling about Puxco right now?
I mean, I like them. They're good. I mean, that's a good team. I mean, we'll see if they get out of districts. That's your thing. You've got to get out of districts. That's a tough district. And you're going to have to, strap on a helmet and put your head down and get out of that district. That's going to be a tough one. I'm not saying they can't do it for sure. I mean, they're going to be the top seed in that district. I'd be shocked if they're not the top seed in that district. But at the same time, I mean, there's some good teams in there, and there's some teams that are going to pose some definite challenges for them. And I think that you got to. I mean, we'll see how it comes out. But I think Puxco has a chance if they get out of districts to make a deep run in Class 2. Anybody who comes out of that district, I think, is going to have a deep run or have a chance to make a deep run in Class 2. We'll just have to wait and see who comes out of that out of the districts. Yeah,
well, I think preparation for postseason at this point, I don't see very many regular season games Puxco losing aside from one towards the end of the year. How does that prep you for your district and moving on past your district?
I think they've got some tougher games. They could play Woodland twice. I think Dexter. I think it's going to be at Dexter. I think that could be a game that's a little bit dicey. I mean, they've already played each other close. Depends on which Dexter team shows up.
Yeah.
You get Dexter's A game. That's going to be a tough game. I think they have Bernie later on in the year. Bernie.
I think it's the week after they play Dexter.
And that one could be a little dicey, especially if Bernie's healthy. So and I'm not sure if it's at Puxco or Bernie, but either if it's at Bernie, that's a whole different game too than if you're playing them at home. So those are tough games. Will that get you ready for district? Depends on who you play in district. There's some teams there that I think it will help you get ready for. There's other teams that it's not going to, those games aren't going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's not a whole lot of losses left on that schedule. But at the same time, we'll, some of these teams you're going to get their A game. You won the Christmas tournament. You're ranked in state. You've got a lot of buzz around you. You're going to get a lot of teams A game. And so we'll see. They're going to get a lot of teams best shot. So we'll see what happens.
They definitely have targets on their back at this point. It's not just like a little chippy, hey, that little school from kind of up north is they're making a run. It's now you're a serious threat. So I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be a cakewalk anymore.
No. But we'll see. Like you said, there's not a lot of losses on the schedule. But I don't know if there's a lot of tough games. How tough some of those games are going to be. Obviously, like you said, Woodland maybe twice there, and a Dexter and a Bernie. But for the most part, I would think that Puxco is going to have a lot more wins on their schedule.
And do you want to talk about a Starter County Conference?
That tournament, I just keep looking toward it, and I'm just like, how brutal is that tournament? That's going to be I keep looking at the way I guess the seeds. My personal guess, the way the seeds come out is you're going to have Puxco and Woodland 1, 2 in some order, and then you're going to have probably Richland 3, and then the winner of the Dexter Bernie game will be 4, and the loser will be 5, and they'll play again. Is kind of the way I see it with Bloomfield 6, Bell City 7, and Advance 8, maybe. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Because I think Bell City lost to Advance earlier in the year, so maybe Advance gets it over Bell City. I don't know. I would think if Bell City is going to be healthy, I would think Bell City would get the higher seed there. But either way, how would you like to have a Bell City or Advance as your 8 seed and have to play them in the first round? That's not a normal first round game in a conference tournament. Usually, if you're the 1 seed and you have the 8 seed, you're pretty much guaranteed a turbo clock and getting out of there pretty quick. And I don't know if you're playing either one of those teams that's going to happen, because those are both. I mean, Advance just keeps getting better and better, and Bell City does as well. And so I wouldn't want to play either one of those teams.
Well, we kind of saw during the Christmas tournament too how much these longer games that get drawn out that aren't complete blowouts, how much they affect you going into the next game. So if you've got a team that's just going to hang around and tire you out, how's that going to affect you? If you have to play like Bernie or Dexter.
Yeah, and not only that, but I'm just guessing Bernie and Dexter be 4 or 5, but Dexter plays Bloomfield on Tuesday night, and it's not out of the realm of possibility Bloomfield comes and beats Dexter. I mean, if the Dexter that we saw in the Christmas tournament shows up, I would assume that Dexter would win, pretty handily. if the Dexter that played against Cape Central and some other games they played this year shows up, I mean, Bloomfield's got a really good chance there. I mean, it's not just a pushover. Bloomfield's not a pushover. They're a team that can really get after you and defensively and make it difficult. And that game could be in the 30s. So I don't know. I would think that Dexter would win that game, but at the same time, I'm not. Dexter's got to show up to play.
Yeah, and it's a little weird to see what I kind of feel like is every little bro in the county is suddenly stepping up and kind of. Unless Dexter comes to play, like you said, they're not really going to make much noise.
Yeah, and Dexter, for ages, has being the big kid on the block in the county, they're the ones who are always getting everybody's A game. They're getting everybody's best shot because everybody wants to beat Dexter. You may not win the county, but if you can beat Dexter, that's a feather in your cap, and you can kind of gloat a little bit. And nobody seems to all those little schools don't seem to like Dexter much, and so yeah, it's they're always going to get their A game, and I'm sure Bloomfield's going to come and be just primed and ready to go, on Tuesday night.
Yeah. So tournament wise, I mean, I think it's probably going to be one of our most stacked tournaments that we cover this year. Very exciting to see, but I don't really know how it's going to affect a lot of teams, but as far as just like the prestige of like, local shot calling, things like that, and you're going to feel pretty good by the end of it.
Yeah, and Woodland's never won this tournament. I mean,
really,
they've never won it. They've made the finals, I think, twice, but they've never won it. And so I will be interested to see if this is probably one of their best teams. They had a really good team a few years back, and they played Bloomfield when Bloomfield made their Final Four run, and I believe Bloomfield got them in the championship game there. So that's about the last time they were in the championship game, and they've got a team this year that can make a run. And if they were to play Puxco in that final, boy, that's a heck of a final game that you would have really, really tough teams right there. And so we'll see if Woodland can finally get one of these tournaments.
Oh, rivalry-wise, too, Woodland is Puxco's biggest rival. That's been told to me by a couple kids from Puxco. Just because of like how competitive these two teams are with each other, and they kind of grew up playing each other too.
Yeah, these two teams have been playing on the summer circuits and everything else. It's funny because I've talked to a lot of coaches over the years, and for years everybody has been telling me, well, Puxco's going to have a good one coming, Woodland's going to have a good one coming, and everybody's back and forth with Puxco, Woodland, which one's better, and it's just, and these are coaches from not even in Stoddard County. These are just coaches that have seen them play in the summer and said, boy, they battle each other. And they played a really good game last year. I think it was like, I want to say it was like a 3-point game, maybe in the 80s, and Woodland pulled it out. I mean, it was an up and down, exciting game. And these two teams, they really get after it. And I kind of want to see them play before the county tournament, but at the same time, I don't want to see them. I want to see that if they play that championship game, I want to see them where they haven't played this year. They're just the first time they meet up, and I think that would be a lot of fun on a neutral floor. Mm-hmm. That would be a lot of fun, I think, for both teams, and I think it would get a lot of fanfare too. Just a lot of people from outside the county, I think, might be interested in that game.
Speculation wise, I kind of want to bring this up. How do you feel Puxico's feeling about South Pemiscot right now?
I would think, and if I'm Puxco, I'm not even thinking about South Pem right now. I mean, you've got a tough district, you've got a tough county ahead of you. You can't even worry about who's coming out of that district down there, and maybe in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, we'd love to play them again. But who knows if South Pem's even going to come out of that district? Because, I mean, that's going to be another tough district down there. So, there's a good chance that those two teams don't even meet in the quarterfinals this year. So I don't think if I was Puxco, I would not be worried about them at all. If I was Coach Frenetti, I wouldn't be saying anything about South Pem. I'd be just focused toward this county tournament and then focused toward keeping them, on point for this district tournament, because it's going to be tough.
Is there a team in the boot heel that you're really looking at right now?
I'm looking at Hayti right now. I mean, right now it seems like Hayti is playing the best in the boot heel as far as if you're talking that Class 2 district down there. They're really impressive. They can win slower. They can win up tempo. They can shoot it. They've got guys that can rebound it well inside. They're athletic. They're guarding pretty well.
They're relatively young too,
and they're very young. That's a team that is going to be good for not just this year, but the next couple of years. But so far what I've seen of them, especially since the couple games since Christmas, I've been pretty impressed. Now they got to continue it on through. It's just a small sample size, so we'll see. But right now, I'm like, hey, Ty really looks good.
Yeah, I agree to all your points. I mean, for the most part, I feel like it's a team that's been easy to sleep on for a little while now. But at this point now, they're making so much noise. They're shooting so well that they're going to be hard to ignore for a while.
Yeah, and again, it could just be just a small sample size. Hey, they got hot for 1 week and they looked really good, and then the next week, because they are young, so there's going to be some inconsistency there. But at the same time, I mean, what I've seen so far looks. I mean, and really, it's all season. I think they're 8-1, 7-1, something like that. I mean, they've had a lot of success this year. The only loss, I think, was the East Prairie, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I mean, it's
if that game was played again, how do you think it would turn out at this moment?
I don't know. I would probably lean East Prairie just because they beat them on a neutral floor. And if East Prairie plays as well as East Prairie can play and Hayti plays as well as Hayti can play, probably East Prairie. I think Johnson just a little too much for him inside, but it wouldn't shock me to see that flipped and see Hayti win that game. I mean, I think it would. I want to see it. Unfortunately, we're not going to see that one. But that's a game I'd love to see. But I mean, I don't know. That'd really be a kind of a coin flip, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I also don't know. I just asked to pose the question just because I think it'd be an interesting matchup to see again, especially seeing how it ended the first time. Just, East Prairie, they're good still, but I feel like they're starting to get, I don't want to say a fall off, but I'm not super impressed with them right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, I saw them play against New Madrid, and they looked really good. They look like the team we saw early in the year. Mm-hmm. The Christmas tournament was kind of a mixed bag. We certainly didn't see them at full strength against Dexter for sure, and probably not against Bernie. But at the same time, I'm like, was that tired legs? Was that you never know. I mean, you're kind of out of your routine a little bit, So I don't know, but they look like they were clicking on all cylinders against New Madrid, and so if they continue to play that, I think that's a team that could make a run in Class 3 and win their district. I think their district's getting tougher by the day as we see Crothersville and some other teams that are kind of stepping up. But we'll see. I think East Prairie, if they bring their A game, they're really tough. They've got 3 really, really good players that can score and get after it, and so we'll see what they do as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think at this point it's all about mindset, and you can't let losses hold you back from how good you can be. We just predicted over and over that it would have been that Puxco East Prairie game in the Christmas tournament if it happened. But if East Prairie played that game the way they're playing games now, I feel like that would have been an easy Puxco win.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You're dealing with 16, 17-year-olds, and you don't know. I mean, I still say that the team we saw play Bernie in that third place game, had they won, would not have been the same team that we saw in that championship game. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been a completely different team, just mindset wise, and just there was such a letdown losing to Dexter for East Prairie, just such a letdown. You could just see it as they walked off the floor. They came on the floor to play Bernie. You just didn't see the same fire that Bernie had. And again, they're 16, 17-year-olds, and it's hard to get up for a game like that when you've had such a disappointing loss the game before. You see it all the time in the Final Four and third place games up there in the state tournament. So it's really tough. But they came out with a lot of fire against New Madrid. In a game that they knew that they probably should win, but they really got after it and really looked good from the start. And I think if they continue to play like that, then they'll be a tough team. I'm anxious to see that. I'm anxious to see that Scott Miss tournament that they play in. I mean, it'll be them and Scott City, I would imagine, would be in the championship. I mean, and that ought to be a really good game, maybe possibly a Class 3 matchup there in a sectional. So I don't know. We'll just see. East Prairie is just kind of unfamiliar territory for East Prairie with a really good chance to win district and a chance to make a run in state. They've never won a district title before, so this is kind of unfamiliar territory for them.
Well, for East Prairie to match up with Scott City, that's going to be a tough matchup. Like, Scott City's just playing so well right now.
They are, and those two teams have matched up in past years, and they're usually some really good games. And East Prairie matches up real well with Scott City height wise, and the kind of the way they kind of play. And Scott City's maybe a little bit deeper, but you stay out of foul trouble, that really doesn't matter. So that ought to be a really interesting game. I believe, I want to say it's the week before the Stoddard County tournament, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure where it's going to be at this year. They rotate that every year to a different school, so I'm not sure where that's going to be at. But I tell you what, that's going to be that's going to be a really good tournament too. Especially when you get to that championship game if those two are playing in it.
Yeah, a lot of exciting games coming up. A lot of exciting basketball coming up too. So, Dave, any final thoughts for the week?
No, not really. I am interested in the South Pim Hayti game on Tuesday night. Kind of, we talked a little bit about Hayti, and I'm anxious to see how South Pim matches up. You talk about a team in the Boot Heel. Let's see which one of those kind of rises to the top in that game. It'll be at Hayti, and that's a pretty good rivalry they have between those two schools. So we'll see what happens there, and I'm anxious to see how that matches up, and another game that kind of. They're not the great teams this year, but it's always a good rivalry. Is that New Matter Charleston game? I'm going to be over there for that game, and it's a good, great rivalry between those two teams. It'll be probably a packed house. Not the greatest of teams, but maybe one of those teams can finally just find something right there, and kind of, I kind of feel like it's going to be Charleston. I really feel like Charleston's just right there, and we'll see what happens with that game.
Yeah. So this has been the SEMO Sports Zone. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the middle of the week.